welcome to the Auto Remarketing Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Overby, Senior Editor of Auto Remarketing, and as we record this on June 30th, the last day of June here, 4th of July coming up, summer fully underway. As many may be aware now, it is officially road trip season. But a little bit later this year, this fall, it's going to be road race season, and that's what our guests here today are going to talk about, specifically about Charge Across America, which is the first ever cross-country electric vehicle race. It's going to go from New York to Los Angeles from October 31st through November 9th. And we'll get into that and what all that's going to entail. But first, let me introduce you to some of the folks behind that. Our guests, Kristen Slanina, who is the managing director of Charge Across America, and Mike Landau, who is the CEO of Park My Fleet. Kristen, Mike, so good to have you on. Thanks for talking to me today.
Absolutely. Good to be here, Joe.
Yep. Thanks, Joe.
Well, Kristen, we'll start with you on this one. I just kind of reading a little bit of the background of the race. I know that kind of the underlying aim is to help alleviate some of the range anxiety, some of the concerns around EV infrastructure and the charging availabilities that these cars can make it across the country. So how did this idea to do this race kind of come about?
Well, I have to give full credit to Mike. He's the one who knocked on my door with the concept and the idea and asked if I'd be interested. And really, it's ironic because it's a 30-year history. It was 30 years ago this May that I was on the MIT Solar Car team, and I was co-captain and one of the drivers, and we did 3 different races. And so it really, that is actually what catapulted me into the automotive industry for the past 30 years. And so when Mike knocked on my door about this concept, I was absolutely excited about it because I think the time is right. And what better way to show people what's possible today and get them excited about the future and demystify the space than to have something so fun and exciting as such a race from New York to LA.
Well, that's pretty incredible. Solar racing, 30 years ago, to see that kind of technology available back then. What's been your kind of experience in the auto industry since that time?
Oh my, it's just incredible how much everything has changed in the last 30 years. And it's just been fascinating to be a part of it and also to be a catalyst for that change. So, when I first started out at Ford, I had 7 different rotations in 2 years and worked at Dearborn Engine Plant as one of those rotations and did, cylinder head design and engineering when I came off the program, and even got sent to Cologne, Germany to work for almost 3 years and spent some of that time at Cologne Engine Plant as well. So it was really interesting to have that experience in what I call a very older type industry and to work in various aspects, not only the engineering and design, but as well as engineering at the plants and facilities, and to get that array. And then my career kind of morphed into more strategy and planning, and then moved into advanced technologies. So things such as, the whole autonomous connected electric fuel cell development and looking at near, mid, and long-term roadmaps for the company globally. And it was at the end of my 21 years at Ford that I was asked to look at this future blueprint for mobility. What does that mean? What are these new potential business models? And how will people and goods move differently in the future?
So looking at this race coming up in late October, early November, what is it all going to entail? And Mike, Kristen, I'll leave it open to both of you guys. What is it going to entail, and what's sort of the A to B roadmap, so to speak?
Right. So it's not a race in the sense of a speed race. We want everybody to obey all the laws, and we're going to make sure that this is a legal race. And if they violate the laws, then there'll be penalties for it. But big picture, it's more of a strategy type event where you need to be strategic about how you transverse the country and you go from point A to point B, or from charging station to charging station, making sure that, and they'll have goals and things that they're going to need and challenges that they face along the route. And then if they finish quickly, there'll be some bonus stuff that they can earn, and so more strategic thinking really than a speed race. And like Kristen said, what we really want to do is elucidate, all the technology that goes into, a car transversing the country. And we're talking, we've got LiDAR participants, and we've got GPS participants, and we've got telemetrics participants, and then, everybody around autonomous driving. And there's really a lot that goes into, like Kristen said, the demystification of everything that surrounds EV, from the apps that identify, where the next charging station is, to apps that like road.travel that help you plan and plot a route between EV stations. So we really want to show people that it's entirely possible. And highlight that this country does, even though we lag behind Europe currently in our EV infrastructure, does have a bright future in terms of what the future brings.
And Joe, I think that by bringing that ecosystem together, new relationships are going to develop that can really help accelerate change. And with technology, really it's exponential now. And I think we're going to be very soon getting to a turning point. And things are going to be changing a lot more rapidly than they even have been. And people inherently are fearful of change. And so I look at this as a way to get people more excited about it, to know what's possible. And I want people to download this route and to do it. New York, LA, LA to New York, and anything in between.
So Kristen, you mentioned the route that the folks are going to be taking on a day-to-day basis. What's it going to look like, each of the 10 days? What is a day going to look like for a participant in this? Where will they, how long will they drive? Where are the stops going to be? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're working with a great startup, because I really want to bring the startup ecosystem together in this. Mm-hmm. So we're working with a great company that is looking at the routes, and they work with professional travelers as well. And so it adds points of interest, that additional texture of the travel, but they also have connected to the open APIs for all of the charging infrastructure network. And so what I need to make sure, and what they're doing is, as we map out the 10-day span, because it's approximately 300 miles a day, in general, making sure with the charging infrastructure that exists and the type of charging, because there's slower chargers and faster chargers for both Tesla and non-Tesla vehicles, I need to make sure that each day-to-day stop is absolutely possible and what time that would take, but also of interest, because we want to showcase America and small town USA and work with local, cities to make it exciting and leverage their town, the mayor, the police, the townspeople, and have those interests as well. And so that's how we're constructing all of the 10 days. And so approximately 300 miles a day, but we also want it to be very interesting and insightful and showcase the beauty of America.
Yeah, and I imagine, it'll help kind of showcase the cities and small towns that are sort of leading the way in terms of EV infrastructure and leading the charge, so to speak, of having EV friendly cities and that sort of thing as well. So the people who are going to be participating in this, is this your average Joes, or are we talking about professional folks, or who's going to be making up the list of participants?
It's kind of a combo of both. You really do want a tapestry of American society participating. So you will have like automotive engineers from some of the OEMs participating and driving. And, we've been in some discussions where some of the participating OEMs will have a contest to see which employee gets to drive it. And then we have considered, opening it up to the general public, for maybe a mother-daughter team or a father-son team, or, some kind of family dynamic. So we're still kind of working with our casting directors around exactly who it's going to be, but figure a mix between automotive engineers to, like you said, like regular people.
You mentioned the casting director. I understand. I read the note from Kristen about kind of the details of it. I understand that it's part of a docuseries coming out. What's the plan around the docuseries? I mean, I know there's probably stuff you can't share at this point, but what's the general plan around the docuseries?
So there's a lot that I actually can't share right now in regards to that, but big picture, it's going to be, call it 6 to 8 episodes that highlight the competition, from the launch in New York to various stops along the way where, we're going to highlight, our partners, and whether that's stopping at some of their facilities to highlight their tech or some new things that they've got rolling out, all the way through. And then we will be live streaming several different segments of it on various social media platforms, and whether that's for sure on our platform, meaning on the Charge Across America platform, on everywhere from TikTok to YouTube to everything in between, but also on participating sponsor partners on their social media platforms as we transverse. And then obviously, there's going to be a post-production element that's going to take some time, and then we hope to release it streaming. Much more than that, though, I can't really say at this juncture.
And you guys are going to have several. You mentioned several different automakers and their electric vehicles, so it'll be a variety of EVs as well.
Yeah, one of the things is that every car has to have a 200 plus mile range. That is the one requirement.
So to go back to some of the details you guys laid out in the just the general plan around this, you acknowledge some of the consumer worries, or about infrastructure, or about range anxiety and that sort of thing. So Kristen, what makes you confident about the EV infrastructure that we currently have in place?
Oh, well, I mean, actually, in working with the startup company on the route traveling, we actually have already seen the map of the US, and you can see the charging infrastructure that exists. So it's quite impressive when you look at the actual amount, but then you do have to dive deeper, as I mentioned earlier, about looking into the speed of that charging. But most trips, if you look at really the data, most trips are really not that long, right? They're under 50 miles a day. And our car sits unused 95% of the time in the garage. And so people in general like to have what I call the 1%. Well, if I want my 1% of the time to do, a 300-mile trip, what does that mean for me? And a lot of people expect to have, more than enough for a full tank of gas. And so would a full charge get them where they want to go? But then their concern is, well, then how do I get back? And so by showing them what's possible, how to actually use the apps that help them plan their trip, and the locations along the way where they should charge and how long that will take, I look at that as alleviating that range anxiety and just giving them the data and information they need to make them feel comfortable to do that type of a journey.
And to shift gears a little bit, we cover the used car retail market pretty extensively, and we've done a couple stories kind of looking at the what is out there in terms of the used EV market. I know there's not a whole lot in terms of wholesale chain, but dealers are starting to sell some of these on the used car side. What do you guys find needs to happen to make the pre-owned EVs kind of a more viable market and maybe a better option for consumers?
Right. So, I mean, it's all about EV market penetration. So, I mean, the stuff that you're looking at that's coming off lease now was really inventory from very, very early adopters. Predominantly, most of it's located in California, which is, kind of been the center of all things EV, and kind of led the charge for the rest of the country. So what I think needs to happen is you're going to have wide scale adoption and investment in EV infrastructure to support this. So as we look at, if you look at the future lineups of the OEMs and what everybody's talking about, we're going to have 25 vehicles, we're going to have 20 vehicles, we're going to have 15 vehicles. All of those are going to, eventually make their way through the remarketing life cycle. And people need to be prepared for it. So, as Parkline Fleet, as an organization, we're getting ready for it with, depot fleet scale charging infrastructure. But I think you're going to need to see adoption of that at the dealership level. And you're seeing that on new vehicles with OEMs like GM mandated Cadillac dealers, that they had to, kind of get with the program and invest in the EV infrastructure or take a payout. So that kind of shows you how seriously they're investing in it. So I think that, and you're starting to see an emergence of a lot of new channels for the remarketing of used vehicles. And I think you're starting to see the lines blur between wholesale and retail. And, a lot of those new channels, or, the virtual channels, are going to be catering to an age demographic that is certainly ripe for EV adoption. And, if you look at millennials that, would be in an income demographic to purchase a used vehicle, them being more eco-conscious would certainly gravitate towards, I would imagine, an electric vehicle at a used vehicle price point.
And maybe if I just kind of add to what Mike's saying, with the trajectory and advancements that's happening on the technologies itself, potentially some of those older EVs might be repurposed, right? You can have those battery packs and the systems repurposed for other uses, because as I said, it's going so fast and the advancements are so great that, potentially that new market might be more appealing for most people. And so, so I look at that as another option for the older EVs.
What would be some of the things that could be repurposed for? I mean, is it still be a consumer sale or used in different purposes?
Oh, it could be a consumer sale in a different realm in terms of, let's say, golf carts or things like that. And also, it could be even for different industries. Maybe the battery pack is used in the food industry for mobile truck, mobile eating locations and things like that. I mean, there's definitely, if you look at all the use cases where batteries could come into play, those battery packs and those systems could be useful for those.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, do you guys you mentioned, working with some of the automakers and then some of the startups for different pieces of it. Do you anticipate bringing other industry partners into the fold through this program?
Absolutely. I mean, we're always open to partner with anybody that sees the value in kind of what we're trying to do. So yeah, I mean, we're open to any and all partners that believe in the initiative and want to participate in, like Kristen started at the beginning of this discussion, with the demystification. So we think that many people play a role in there. We think that there's legacy companies that are very large and publicly traded that play a role in there. And then we think that there's a lot of startups that have come up with new and very innovating either tech or hardware or a combination thereof that is going to be disruptive and also helpful in supporting everything around e-mobility.
And I'm all about inclusion because you know what, if you have, let's say, a quote competitor, someone that's in your same space, I look at it as amplification of being a partner instead of wanting to push that or keep that out. And so it's like Mike said, yeah, the more partnerships, the better. It's just a good thing for everybody.
Well, last question before I let you guys go here. Where can people go to learn more and kind of dig into to Charge Across America?
We have a great team on our social media, and we were able to secure Charge Across America for our website. We have a weekly newsletter as well, so that can be easily subscribed to, and I highly recommend it. And then also on all of the major social media platforms, we have Charge Across America on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. So you can find us everywhere, Charge Across America.
Very cool. Well, I can imagine that, come November, it's going to be very good for like having those Instagram and TikTok videos. It's going to be fodder for that. A lot of social media opportunities there.
Exactly.
I'm excited to watch and see how it unfolds. And I think it's really cool what you're doing. I mean, I think it's, as you mentioned, it's, demystifying something, but using a fun way to do it. And who doesn't love travel and who doesn't need travel after last year? But this is a cool way to show it, and really appreciate you guys coming on to talk to me about it.
Absolutely, Joe. We should figure out a way for you to podcast from somewhere on the race.
I would love that. So yeah,
that's right.
We'll figure that out, and I'm all about that. So we'll be in touch. But guys, thank you all so much for joining me today, and that's gonna do it for today's episode of the Auto Remarketing Podcast. My thanks to Mike and Kristen and the team at Park My Fleet and Charge Across America. And for Nick Zulovich and our team here at Auto Remarketing, I'm Joe Overby. Thanks for listening.